welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing another wrap-up video, and I'm really excited about this one because I read one of my favorite books of the year, one of my favorite books of all time in this reading cycle, and so I'm so excited to share it with you guys because it was so flippin' good and I loved it. So I'm really excited to talk about that book, but I haven't done one of these in a while. I'm actually reading a book right now that I really wanted to put in this wrap-up video, but I didn't finish it in time, but it's so good and I really wanted to talk about it in this video, but you guys are gonna have to wait until the next one to hear about it. But not only do I have like one of the best books I've ever read in this video, I definitely have two books in this video that were really not good and probably two of my least favorite books I've read this year as well. So we're gonna have a wide variety of books in this video. So we're going to talk about the first book, which just happens to be one of my least favorite books that I've read this year. So this is one of the 2-star reads. This is Bring Me Back by B.A. Paris. So this is my third B.A. Paris book, and I've talked about B.A. Paris books in the past, and for some reason, every single time I read one of her books and every time I review one of her books, I always say the same thing. They are repetitive. And I had that same exact experience with this book as I did with her other books. So this is basically about this couple, and the main character is Layla and the guy's name is Finn. And Layla and Finn are together and they're like this madly in love couple, and then one day they stop at like this rest stop in the car and Finn gets out to go to the bathroom, and then when he gets back, Layla is nowhere to be found. She is gone, she's no longer in the car, and he has never been able to find her ever since her disappearance from the car that night. And 10 years later, he's now with her sister, Ellen, and he is still, you know, wondering like where Layla is and what happened to her and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, these little hints kind of start popping up here and they're these little Russian dolls, and kind of everything starts to come to fruition about what happened to Layla and things like that. So this book, like I said, repetitive. So the Russian doll thing was like one of the key elements to this book. These Russian dolls kept kind of coming up and kind of giving hints to kind of what happened to Layla and things like that. But the thing about the Russian doll thing is, cute and creative as that was, like that's literally the only thing that pushed the story along. Like one Russian doll would pop up, and then another Russian doll, and another Russian doll, and another Russian doll, and like I would say like 3/4 of the way through this book, it was kind of like, okay, like I get it, like Russian dolls, like let's kind of bring something else into the story, you know what I mean? And I feel like at the end of this book, it was one of those books where you're just like I feel like with this book, you had to just like suspend your disbelief throughout the whole thing. Like everything just kind of felt like weird, like why people did the things that they did, and it just didn't seem very realistic, and I was just kind of like rolling my eyes kind of at the end. And then of course one of my all-time like least favorite tropes was kind of like the twist in this book, and I don't want to say what it is. I did say it on my Goodreads review, but I did like a spoiler warning. So if you guys want to know what it was, you can read my Goodreads review, because I do say what the like tropey twist was that I freaking hate. Because I read another book that had the same exact twist and it just irritates me so bad every time. And I think that this is probably going to be my last B.A. Paris book. I don't know why I keep picking them up, because I feel the same way every time I read them. The thing is they're not like horrible reads, but they're just not like 5-star, 4-star reads. Every single book that I've read of B.A. Paris's have been 3 stars except for this one, which was 2 stars. So I just think it's, me and B.A. Paris don't mesh well, you know? So the next book that I read was a book that I found at Walmart, and when I saw this book cover, I was like, oh my god, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. I need to buy it. Like this was 100% a cover buy. I had never heard anybody talk about it, and I saw it and I was just like, I need to own that. Like I love that. And it is called House of Harlow, and this is by, not House of Harlow, that's Nicole Richie's brand. House of Harlow, and this is by Crystal Sutherland. And as you can tell, this cover is everything. Like everything, it's beautiful. And I love covers that are like painted. Like I love if there's girls or people on the cover, as long as they're really nicely done, like digital art or paintings. I just think it's stunning. And when there's flowers involved, like that's even better. I love it. So love this. Speaking of flowers, if you see a tattoo poking out of the bottom of my shirt, that is not real. I didn't get a tattoo yet, but I'm just kind of like testing the waters, if you know what I mean. So if you guys are wondering what that is, it's not real. So this book, actually, I started reading it and I was kind of just like so-so on it. Like it was really hard for me to kind of fall into this book and get excited to pick it up. Like I would say through the first like quarter of this book, I was just kind of like, I don't know, like I just wasn't really like super excited to read it and stuff like that. But then about halfway through, I really felt drawn into this world. It kind of started to unfold a little bit, and kind of like mysteries kind of started to come about, and then this really weird other world came about, and it just became so unique, so cool. I feel like this book was just very creative. I really loved what she did with this book because it was just so creative and thoughtful and original, which I really, really liked. Like, I'd never read a book like this before, and I just really love how she did it. So basically this is about 3 sisters, and when they were young, they were kidnapped. And one day, after their kidnapping, they just show up on the street of their city, and they're completely naked, but they have completely bleach blonde, like white hair, and they all have a moon scar on their chest, and they're crying, and they don't remember anything that happened to them before that moment that they're on the street. Like, their memory is completely wiped and they don't know what happened. So this is kind of following Iris, which is the youngest sister, and she is kind of trying to remember what happened to her. So in the process of all this, her oldest sister, who is like this insanely beautiful model, because all of these sisters are like stunningly gorgeous, especially after they got back from kidnapping. Like, their facial features are just very ethereal, their hair is white and stuff like that. So her sister is this famous model, and she goes missing, and so the middle sister and the younger sister need to go find her, and to find her, they find themselves in very weird places. Like, that's all I'm gonna say. And this book is so like Tumblr-esque, right? It's such like an aesthetic book. Like, if you could think of just like that certain aesthetic of like witches and moons and kind of like that boho forest witch crystals and plants, and it's like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like this author just wanted to encompass all of those things into one book and just like give you those vibes. Like, I kind of felt like it was a little overboard, you know what I mean? Like, if you read this in 10 years, you're gonna be like, wow, that was like a very specific aesthetic for like 2020. And I felt like I was kind of rolling my eyes because I feel like if you read something like this in like 10 or 20 years, it's gonna read extremely dated. Not that that's a big deal, it's just something that kind of bothers me sometimes. One thing that I really love about this book is it has one of my favorite things in it, which is morally gray characters. Characters that are bad, but like you can understand their badness in a way. You can understand the things that they do and why they do it. And it's kind of like that weird moral conundrum where they are bad and you can admit to them not being good people, but there's a small part of you that can understand why they made the choices that they made. And I feel like there's a character in this book that is very much that. And I love that because I think it's extremely hard to do, and I think that the author did a really good job with that in this book. I do feel like it's a little bit forgettable, just a little bit forgettable. Like, there's definitely elements of this book that I'm still struggling to kind of remember a little bit, but for the most part it was good. You just kind of have to push yourself through that first part, because the first part I kind of felt like was a little hard for me to get through, but the second half I literally read like in one night. My husband took the girls to their cousin's house and they hung out there all night, and I literally just sat on the couch and read like half of this book in one night. I gave it 4 stars. So with this next book, there's so many people that are obsessed with this book, and I understand why. Like, I totally understand the hype to this book. It is a must read. It is fantastically written, beautifully written, and it's a stunning book. And I gave this book 4 stars. I wanted to give it 5 stars so flippin' badly, and I almost did because it deserves it. But I gave it 4 for a few reasons, and it's more of like a subjective type of reason, but I did only because I didn't have the reaction that I did that other people had. So the title of the book is The Song of Achilles. This is by Madeline Miller. You guys have probably heard of this. Like, it's a very popular book. But one thing that I heard about this book is that it's going to make you cry. Like, you are going to be dead in your coffin and like crying your eyes out. It's like one of the most touching reads, and I was really excited about that because I don't cry in books. I just don't. I don't know what my problem is, but it's really hard for me to fully cry in a book. And I thought for sure that this was going to be the book for me. It was going to make me cry. But sadly, I have to say, it just didn't make me cry. Like, I understood why it was sad and why it would have made people cry. But like, there was a certain element I felt like to the very, very end that I felt like was just slightly rushed, but like not rushed at the same time. I don't know if it was, okay, here's where I think the problem was. I read this on the way to the coast in the car with my kids in the back seat and my husband driving. And so I was kind of like distracted a little bit. So that might have had a huge reason why I didn't feel as touched by the end as some people did. But I did not feel, even for like 2 seconds, like I was gonna cry. Does that make me, like, am I the only one? I just feel like it's weird because everyone else was like so sad about it, and I'm like, why am I not crying? With that said, it was so good still. Like, there's something about the way that she wrote this, like, couple. Like, Achilles and what's his name? Patroclus? Patroclus? Is it Patroclus? Achilles and Patroclus, their relationship was so well done. Like, it goes, like, it starts out when they're kids, and you can kind of see them, like, meet, and you can see them become best friends, like, absolute best friends, like, it's almost like a brotherhood. And then you kind of see them kind of move up into, like, middle school age, where they're kind of supposed to start having feelings for girls, and, you know, they're, you know, playmates and stuff, and the other boys that they, you know, hang around with, they're kind of starting to get interested in girls, but they're really not. And then they, like, go off together to train with this guy, and then they kind of start, like, admitting their feelings to each other. It's, like, so well done, like, I can't explain it. It's like you kind of experience their entire relationship with them, and I think that that's why it makes the end so, like, devastating and hard-hitting. Like, you see their entire relationship from start to end, and like how much they care about each other and how important they are to each other, and it is so well done, guys. Like, I can't explain it. So good. It's so well done. Like, I feel like this is a book that everybody needs to read in their life. Like, everybody just needs to read it because it's just so good. So I highly recommend this. Even though I gave it 4 stars, it deserves 5, but I gave it 4. I'm just torn. So next up is my favorite book I've read this entire flipping year. Yes, it beats out all the books that I talked about in my mid-year wrap-up video. Like, this book was so good, and it just made my heart flippin' sing, and I can't explain it. Like, you know, when you read those books, there's certain books that just come into your life, they fall into your hands, and they were just made for you. That is how I feel about this book. So It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. So there's a few reasons why I think I just died over this book, okay? The first one being takes place in the Pacific Northwest on the coast. You guys know I love a good Pacific Northwest coast read because it just has those vibes, like the nautical feel that I just love, and it's like rainy and kind of cold, and I just love it. The second reason I liked this is because the main love interest is completely my type. Like, in every possible way. He's like manly and rugged. He has like this manly job that's like kind of dangerous, and he's like super like muscular and like really big, like a big guy. He has like a beard, and he wears like a beanie, and he's a crabber. Totally my type of love interest in a book. Like, I just love a good like guy, like full of testosterone, and that's exactly what he is in this book. Like, he's just the perfect guy, and I just loved his beard, like, and he's hot on the cover, like, hello. The other thing I liked about it is I didn't realize how much I like non-toxic romances. Like, I feel like hate to love is good to read and fun to read. Like, I love a good toxic, like, hate to love type of thing, you know, like the drama, it's always so good. But I didn't realize how much I just wanted a romance book that didn't have massive amounts of hate to love, massive amounts of drama. Like, the thing about this guy is he kind of starts out as a grump, and then he just wants to be with her, like, so much, and he's not mean to her, and like, there's not a lot of bad communication in this book. Like, she did such a good job that if there was bad communication, like, she would wrap it up really quickly. Like, she had the main love interest always say, like, we need to clear this up, like, we're not on the same page here, we need to clean this up, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow. And then they would talk about it the next day. Like, there was never bad communication, they were always talking. And the other great thing too is the main character in this is like this rich, like, spoiled girl from LA. She's like an influencer, and she's never worked a day in her life, and she's just kind of spoiled. And her dad kind of forces her to go to this Pacific Northwest town to take over her deceased father's old bar, and so she gets there, and it's like this crappy little apartment. Well, the thing that I loved about this book is the main character, what's her name? Piper. She is who she is, okay? Like, she's just that way. She loves fashion, she has a lipstick purse, she loves like high heels, and she's just a girly girl, and that's who she is. And even though she's just a little bit spoiled, right? She came from a spoiled world. The main love interest, Brendan, just accepts her for who she is. And it's just the most amazing thing in the world. I just love that about him. Like, he didn't want her to change, and the other great thing is that she didn't want him to change who he was. They accepted each other literally for who they were the entire story, and it was so great. And I love that about it. Like, Piper kind of in this book reminds me a little bit of Cher Horowitz from Clueless. Like, she's not a horrible person. Like, Cher in that movie, like, has really good intentions most of the time, but she's just kind of spoiled and rich. So sometimes she doesn't realize when she's like doing something kind of like spoiled and rich, but she has good intentions. She's overall kind of a good person, even though she kind of does some weird things sometimes. That's totally Piper in this book. And the smut is really good. It's just sweet. There's not a bunch of drama in it. And like, I can't explain it. Like, this book was seriously written for me. I'm not kidding when I say, like, hands down, probably my all-time favorite romance I've ever read. This beats out Josh and Hazel, which I loved that book. This book was perfect. Absolute perfection. I wouldn't change a dang thing about it. Like, I could talk about this book for 10 hours. Just read it, okay? Because it's so cute and it's so good. And I literally, when I got done reading this, like, I wanted to just like start back from the beginning and read it again. I can't explain it to you. This book has my heart. It has my soul. It's definitely like my all-time favorite romance. It's so good. And Brendan, like, I have some book boyfriends from fantasy books. Like, Brendan is my #1 contemporary romance book boyfriend. Like, he is perfection. So the next book is Bad Girls with Perfect Faces, and this is by Lynn Weingarten. And this book actually was random. I actually packed this when I went to the coast for camping, and I just packed it because I thought it would be easy. It's pretty short. The writing is very, very big. The chapters are very, very short. So I thought this would be a good read for like travel, and I was absolutely right. This is like the perfect book to read for traveling when you have to read for like short chunks of time because you're getting distracted or you're doing lots of things or you want to read a couple chapters before you go to bed. Like, perfect travel book. This is a catfish story about a guy and a girl. They're best friends, and the guy keeps getting into this really toxic relationship with this girl, Ivy, and she is a very toxic girl. And his best friend, who is a girl, what is her name? Sasha. She sees how toxic she is, and she does not want her best friend to be in a relationship with her. So she makes this fake account, this fake guy, and she starts texting and messaging Ivy so she can distract Ivy from her best friend, and then a whole bunch of weird, crazy things ensue from there. And it's just really fun to see unfold. I wouldn't say that this is like a life-changing read by any means. I definitely feel like the dialogue was a little bit weird in this book, if we're being honest. Like, I just kind of felt like people don't talk like this, not in like a funny, cheesy, metaphorical, poetic, you know, type of way. It's more just like cheesy ways of talking. I don't know, I just kind of felt like the dialogue was kind of weird, but it wasn't so weird that it took away from the story. Like, I was able to kind of look past it. Sometimes I can't look past it and it really, really, really ruins kind of the story for me. But in this case, I could look past it. But I would say that this book is really good for just like a rainy day. You could read this book in 1 sitting or 2 sittings. It's extremely quick to read. So if you have like 1 full day where you have to just sit inside and do nothing, like, this is a really good book for that because it's quick. It's really, really fast to read. The chapters are super duper short. I gave this 4 stars just because I thought it was pretty entertaining and there was just some kind of fun things to unfold in it, and it was quick. So this next book is a book that I was really hoping to read. I was really excited to read it, and I have to say I gave it 2 stars, and that really kind of hurt my heart, I'm not gonna lie, because I used to say that these 2 authors were like 2 of my all-time favorite authors, and after reading like Tessa Bailey and stuff, like, I'm starting to question myself just a little bit because they did write Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, so you guys probably know who I'm talking about. That's one of my favorite romances, and so I thought like I would really love this book, right? And they also wrote On the Honeymooners. But I read the Honey Don't list, Christina Lauren, and I thought for sure this was going to be a cute, fun, fluffy little romantic contemporary, and I just hated this. I really hated this. Like, I haven't been so bored with a book in like a really, really long time. Like, with that Bring It Back book that I also gave 2 stars, at least I was kind of entertained in that book. Like, there was a mystery to solve and stuff like that. Like, I felt like, yes, it was 2 stars, but I was still like kind of interested in like what was happening. With this book, I just couldn't care less. I literally couldn't care less. So this is about Carrie, who is an assistant to Melissa. And Melissa and Russell Tripp are like these major HGTV stars, right? They have all these books and they're like super, super famous, and they do like these renovations on HGTV. And Carrie is Melissa's assistant. Now, there's a guy, James, who actually comes on board as the engineer, but they end up just kind of like pushing him off to the side and making him Russell, the husband of the duo, his assistant. So now Carrie and James are their assistants. And so James and Carrie end up going on tour with them because Melissa and Russell Tripp are having major problems in their marriage, and they need Carrie and James to kind of like keep them together on this tour so they don't like kill each other on this tour. So of course, like, James and, you know, Carrie end up like falling for each other and blah, 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 blah. So the thing about this book that irritated the crap out of me is we're supposed to be kind of following Carrie and James. What we're seeing in this book is Melissa and Russell through James and Carrie's eyes. So we're spending more time like focusing on Melissa and Russell than we are on James and Carrie, but at the same time the authors want you to care about Carrie and James because those are the two people falling in love, but we're not. We're focused on Melissa and Russell the whole time. And I think that that's why this book really, really failed for me, because Melissa and Russell are so unlikable in this book. It's not even funny. Like, I was so annoyed with them the whole time. Like, I didn't want to like hear about them anymore. I didn't care about them anymore. And I just kind of felt like nothing was happening in Carrie and James's life. Like, nothing. Like, the plot wasn't about them. I just felt no connection with Carrie and James. I felt like their romance was extremely flat. I didn't see any flirtation. I didn't see that really strong like desire for each other. It wasn't like this really strong spark where you're just like rooting for them. And the smut in this was like not very good. It would kind of fade to black, and it just total fail, total fail. I was so bored. Like, literally the entirety of this book. There wasn't really a part in this book that I was really that interested in. Like, I should have DNF'd it, but I DNF'd a book before I read this one, and I felt like I couldn't DNF another one right after, so I just kept pushing through. And the entirety of this book I was bored. So definitely a 2-star read. Didn't care about the characters, didn't care about the story. Definitely don't recommend this. There's probably a million like romantic contemporaries out there that are better than this, so skip out on this one. So the next book that I read was Fangs. This is a graphic novel by Sarah Anderson. This book was so flipping cute, I cannot explain it. So I saw this at my library, and I saw Books with Chloe read this, and she was saying how cute it was, and so I saw it at the library, checked it out, and I read this probably in like 15 minutes. It's the easiest book to read. You could read this in 15 minutes, but it's adorable. I probably could have given this 4 stars just because of the lack of story and lack of any depth, because this doesn't have any depth at all. But the reason I gave this 5 is because it was just cute and adorable and fun to read. And sometimes if something is just fun to read and you're thoroughly enjoying your time, like, it deserves 5 stars. Like, she did a good job with this. It was cute. The only thing I would say is don't buy this. Well, okay, I can't say that. That's not being very helpful to the author. I mean, of course you can buy this if you want to buy it, but this took me, like I said, 15 minutes to read max. It is a super quick read. If I were you, I would just maybe go to Barnes & Noble and find this and then go sit down on a couch and read it really quick, or go to your library, sit down on a couch and read it really quick. You don't have to check it out. You don't need to buy it to be able to read it because it's that quick of a read. So this isn't a comic. It's actually, or sorry, this isn't a graphic novel. It's more like little short comic strips. It's basically about like a vampire girl who marries a werewolf guy, or not marry, but they like date, they get together, whatever. And it's kind of like funny little comic strips of like funny scenarios that would happen if like a vampire married a werewolf, and they're just funny and they're cute, but there's no real plot line or anything like that. You won't be disappointed because it's that freaking cute. So the next book I read was another graphic novel, and I got this one at my library. This one, it was called, let me see. So this one was called Welcome to the New World, and this is by Jake Halpern. Now, this was a graphic novel that is about refugees coming to America and like what life is like for, you know, refugees that do come to America and they start a new life in America and what that looks like for them. I really like this book. I gave it 4 stars. And the reason this book I think is so cool to read is because it's not something that we can really understand or know. You know, I'm from America. I don't know what it's like to be a refugee family that comes here and doesn't know how anything works, doesn't know what to do, is trying to like figure everything out, and being a little bit disappointed at times with what America is because of maybe what they've been told life was going to be like, and, you know, really like the struggles that they go through while trying to make a life here. So I would definitely pick this up if you guys see it at your library. I thought it was really good, and it was just such a good book to learn something from and kind of empathize with people that aren't me, you know what I mean? So definitely pick this up. I thought it was super good, and I gave it 4 stars. So the next book I read was a audiobook called The Great Pretender, The Uncover Mission That Changed Your Understanding of Madness. And this is by Susanna Cahalan. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but she's the same lady that wrote Brain on Fire, which is one of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely love that book. So this book happened, or it was about a study that happened in the 1970s, and it was this Dr. Rosenhan, who went into like a mental institution as a sane psychiatrist, right? And he had a couple other pseudo patients, is what they call them, that were his students that also did this as well, and they all checked themselves into these mental institutions, and they basically had to fake mental illness, and they were all happened to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, and that was all their diagnosis, and they were able to fake those illnesses to get into these mental institutions, and they wanted to study what it was like inside the mental institution, and he ended up publishing a paper about his discoveries and, you know, his studies throughout the process. So the author wanted to kind of go and dive deep into this study and find out as much as she could about it and kind of interview some of the pseudo patients and all that kind of thing. And what she found was surprising in that not everything that he said in his paper was 100% true, and some things were embellished or over exaggerated and stuff like that to kind of like prove points that he wanted to make, you know what I mean? The only issue with this book was you could tell that she dove so deep into this with research that she did not want to waste any of that research, so she put all of it into this book. Like, it was so packed full of like her research that she almost went off on tangents that didn't need to be there, fell down rabbit holes and stuff like that, and I felt like she didn't really stay on topic all the time, and I found myself kind of like losing interest. And I would definitely say that by, you know, close to the end, I was kind of like, okay, wrap this up. Like, I kind of want to know what happened and like what you discovered, what you found, and all that kind of stuff. And I just kind of felt like it kept going and going and going with all of this stuff that I didn't care about that much. But I can definitely say it was interesting. Like, I think that there's some very interesting gems in this book, and it talks about like the closing of mental institutions and like why that happened, and, you know, whether or not that was a good idea or not. Which I think was really interesting as well. So there's a lot of interesting kind of like little subtopics in here, but I definitely want to say that the whole book was interesting. I think that it got a little bit redundant, a little bit tangenty, is that a word? But I gave it 3 stars. Like, I thought I was really gonna like this personally. Like, I really thought it was gonna be super fascinating, but I didn't find it as fascinating as I thought I would. So 3 stars. If you really like psychology or you're going into psychology, I would definitely recommend like giving this a try, because I think that this is a great book for somebody going into like the mental health field, because I think that there's some interesting little gems that you can kind of take in for when you're working with patients and stuff like that, if you know what I mean. So this was okay. It wasn't my favorite thing, but it was alright. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely pick up It Happened One Summer. Like, if you're a romance fan, like, perfection. Yeah, that is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I cannot wait to tell you guys about the book that I'm reading right now, because it's really good. But that's gonna have to wait until next time. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!